Night When Night Skies Retaliate. The random thought of the day is about possibly a few Asian people being in heaven. Probably like, what in the world are you talking about? Well, let me explain. I heard one day, I was watching this video, that someone had a dream they went to heaven, or a vision they went to heaven. And in the dream, this dream or vision, the person reported that they saw that one of the things they noticed about heaven is that they didn't see very many Asian people in heaven. And that just kind of shook me. And it was just weird that that was pointed out. Because one, I think we have a lot of good Asian brothers and sisters, whether they're Christian or not. But I still kind of found it troubling. So I kind of thought about it, kept it in the back of my mind, and just looked for indications that that could either be a true statement or a false statement. So being a Christian is kind of like where we can't just be observant of the physical or natural world. We have to be observant of the spiritual world as well, because even though they're separate, they can interact with each other. Whether you believe in it or not, that's fine. That is totally fine. But the thing is that I've also heard that the Chinese government has been oppressing Christians, killing Christians, as well as other locations on the planet, which kind of makes me think that not very many Asian people being in heaven could be true. That's just based on natural things. It was a spiritual dream. But in the natural, if you look around the world at China, the Chinese government, they are doing stuff like that to try to stifle religion, Christians. So it's entirely possible. And you should be able to check on the internet and see if you find stories about China oppressing Christians. One of my favorite pastimes is basically watching anime. I like anime. I think it's pretty cool. They have some good stories. There are movies, but just in a different form. And Japan, basically, they have some of the best animators in the world. And while I was watching them, I've noticed that they at times will have a lot of religious, political, social, economic, worldview characterizations, as well as a lot of religious mischaracterizations. I want to say that one of the shows I saw, they'll have things like where the angels and things of God will be portrayed as evil. Also, they'll have demons and sins being portrayed as good. It would also seem that they would use things like blessing as a bad thing, or holy as a bad thing, while being cursed or condemned as being seen as being good, or being even a superpower for a bad guy who's actually doing good things. So the mischaracterizations is actually calling bad good and good bad, which is funny because there's actually a Bible verse, now that I think of it, that actually said in the last days people will call the good things bad and the bad things good, which is really like a fulfillment of Bible prophecy if you think about it. So now, don't get me wrong, I think the anime is good. A lot of the movies are good. But at the same time, if you're not strong in your belief, I believe people who are not strong in their belief, or who don't really have a belief, will actually be confused by it. So, while it makes for good entertainment, it is one of the best ways to introduce confusion and to brainwash the world into demonizing the church and Christians. That said, I can see why the tribulation in the Bible had to be so harsh. If anime and the anti-Christian people of the world are able to brainwash the people into believing God, Jesus, and the devils are bad, then I can see why the world would try to fight against God in the Battle of Armageddon. I say that to say that movies, media, misinformation, and the news are the new ways the powers that be are using to manipulate and control the world. I can remember a time where I think they used to use subliminal messages in TV shows and commercials to actually make people want to eat a certain food, and that became illegal. But now it looks like they've been able to mix subliminal messages into movies, right into the script itself. They ain't got to put no subliminal messages in it. They just lead you to think a certain way because of a cool character or action figure, or not action figure, but action star or hero in the movie. So the next time you watch a good movie or a popular hero or action star, or even a TV show with one of those in it, I want you to listen to what they actually say. Because sometimes they will make references to God or about faith or something like that, specifically to Christian God, you know. So it's one thing to actually not mention God at all, which is cool, but it's totally a different thing to mention God and then state that God doesn't have any power or God doesn't exist in the movie, because that phrase, that actually carries weight to people, especially young people. So I also find it kind of interesting in a movie. It's called The Old Guard, and how it portrayed God to the world. So I'm not exactly sure how they were trying to lead into it, but it kind of seemed a little, I don't know, it could have just been the person, how the person was portraying it. But it was almost like they were trying to attack the idea of God and faith, which I thought was kind of messed up. You know, they can do what they want to do, but, you know, if they can say it, anybody can say it, I guess. But I don't know. I don't want to actually, I can tell you about God, you know, I can tell you all the love about God, but I would rather for you to decide for yourself about God, rather than just influence your decision, or per se. I can tell you about it, provide you all the evidence, at least from my perspective, my life, but I don't want to manipulate you into believing in the God, or manipulate you into not believing in the God. I'd rather just give you the facts and let you decide. But it seems like a lot of the media in the world, they don't really care what you think. They want you to think a certain way. And if they can get you to think a certain way by what you see and what you hear, they're actually practicing a means of controlling you. So, but I would just say be mindful of that. So I think at this point in time, a lot of the faiths of the world are really under attack, and they're using social media, movies, TV shows, stars, actually to do that. And that's just one step away from really the mark of the beast, where it says either you do something or you don't get something, which is why I don't think you should I don't believe we should get to a point where we completely depend on the government. Because when you completely depend on somebody, that means they have power over you. They can at any time take it away from you. But if you earn it yourself, they can't just do that. But that's a whole other story. So unfortunately, I think some of this stuff is kind of conspiracy theory-ish, but in a way it's not. I mean, because if it talks about it in the Bible where people will call good things bad and bad things good, then that was written like 2,000 years ago. So So it's not really a conspiracy theory, it's a fulfillment of prophecy. But based on the evidence that I've seen in regard to the dream about not a lot of people, not a lot of Asians being in heaven, whether it be a dream or a vision, I find it kind of really disturbing that the evidence I've seen, I can actually see it being true. If they're showing you that good is, God is bad in movies, or God doesn't exist in movies, and then they're showing it all over the world as truth, whether you believe it or not, then I can see how, if a lot of Asian people look at that, or if they're in China and they're being oppressed by the Chinese government and they're not being allowed to even worship any God, because the government don't want them, they are really stealing that possibility, the possibility of going to heaven from their people, the people in their country. And I would hope the Asian government wouldn't do that, but based on the dream, whether you believe it or not, there's a lot of supporting evidence that it may be true. So don't let your government steal God away from you, because it looks like they're trying to. But that being said, that's just random thoughts I've had. This has been One Nice Guys Friday. Like, comment, subscribe.